Hello, my name is Lauren and welcome to the Theoretical YouTube channel. Did you know that in 2019, Disney is not releasing a movie that is not a sequel, remake, or reboot? Not a single one. Okay, it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, I'm looking forward to Frozen 2 and Toy Story 4. Those look pretty promising. I'm absolutely looking forward to Captain Marvel this month, and Endgame is going to be incredible. And Star Wars 9 comes out this year. We are finally wrapping up the third trilogy and getting some definitive answers to our questions. I'm gonna waste so much money at movie theaters this year. But you know what movie I'm not looking forward to? Dumbo. And frankly, Aladdin looks fine, and The Lion King comes out this summer. But is anyone else just tired of all the live action remakes? I mean, just in the last 4 years, we've had Cinderella, Alice Through the Looking Glass, The Jungle Book, Beauty and the Beast, Christopher Robin, and The Return of Mary Poppins. In terms of new animated Disney films in the same period of time, we had Zootopia and Moana. And if you count Pixar, we also watched Coco. Disney just isn't spitting out new original content, and they seem to be just recycling old ideas, even though these films are not receiving wild critical success. So why won't they just give up? Well, I think I know, and the answer might be more strategic than you think. Okay, when did Disney start pushing these remakes? Well, Disney has been making live-action movies in general for a very long time. Really, they've always been part of the Disney repertoire, just not as well remembered or branded. But the first time Disney actually remade one of their animated films was in 1994 with an adaptation of The Jungle Book. But no one cares about that! They also made some movies off of 101 Dalmatians, but again, this really isn't what people are complaining about when they mention Disney live-action remakes. Yes, 102 Dalmatians and The Jungle Book are technically live-action adaptations, but they aren't associated with the current movement. Nowadays, a Disney live-action remake has its own style and reputation, and really the first movie that set the standard was Maleficent in 2014.
Well.
Oh gosh, that was half a decade ago. So yes, The Sorcerer's Apprentice and Alice in Wonderland technically came first, but Maleficent was really a turning point for Disney. Here we have a darker adaptation of a Disney classic with a couple big name actors and a lot of extra backstory. This is pretty much the template that they take forward. I don't know, I guess you could say the trend started with Alice in Wonderland, but Maleficent is where I draw the line. But wherever you think it started, the movement exploded the next year when 2015's Cinderella hit theaters. And this movie really encompasses what Disney is trying to replicate again and again. Here we have a classic fairy tale that is synonymous with Disney. Sure, there are other versions of Cinderella, but everyone pretty much just defaults to Disney. So her remake does a couple things. One, it's pretty much the original movie, but a little bit longer. With Maleficent and Alice, you aren't really getting the same story. If the originals weren't owned by the same company, you'd hardly compare them at all. It's taking the same fairy tale and making a new movie off of that original concept, just like any other company could do. But 2015's Cinderella is Disney's Cinderella. It's the same story, but without the animation and some more backstory. 2. It has that semi-star-studded cast, but not all the way. I mean, sure, you've got Helena Bonham Carter and Cate Blanchett, but the lead of the movie isn't super famous. In fact, the only reason I know of Lily James is because her name is literally Harry Potter's parents. And there's that one guy from Game of Thrones, but it's not like kids are binge-watching HBO anyway. 3. The last thing it does is bet everything on spectacle. The story is basic. I mean, it's the Cinderella story, for crying out loud. The characters aren't super fleshed out because you already know them. Everybody knows them. Whatever little backstory you shove down our throats isn't going to really change the motivations of the evil stepmother, or Prince Charming, or Cinderella. No one is in the audience because they want to know who these people are. We saw the first movie. No, the biggest draw for the film is spectacle. the elaborate set pieces, the fairy godmother's magic, and of course, the dress. Honestly, the only thing this movie did better than the original was costume design. So good. Anyway, that's what the live action remakes really bring to the table. Not creating new stories and characters, but bringing the classic animation to life. What would a pumpkin carriage really look like? How about the castle, the prince? And carrying those three concepts forward, Disney created the perfect template for moderate success? Yeah, these remakes aren't exactly anyone's favorite Disney movie. From what I can tell, the general consensus is, well, they aren't bad, so why keep making them? And when I say making them, I mean Disney's lineup for the next couple of years is crazy. I mean, we've got Dumbo, Aladdin, and The Lion King this year. Mulan, Maleficent 2, Jungle Book 2, Cruella, and Pinocchio have all been confirmed. And The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Lilo and Stitch, Snow White, Lady and the Tramp, and The Little Mermaid have all been rumored. Guys, if you're sick of live action Disney now, fair warning, this might drive you insane. And you know what's worse? The only Disney animation film that we know is coming is Frozen 2. After that, there's just nothing. Pixar has Onward and a couple release dates, but Disney just canceled the only other project that we knew about. I swear, the apocalypse is nigh if the last Disney movie ever is Frozen 2. So with such lukewarm reception, why is Disney still pushing these remakes so hard? I guess the simple solution is that they make money, and lots of it. Take Beauty and the Beast, for example, which made $504 million domestically and $1.2 billion worldwide in 2017. If you compare this to Moana, which came out about 5 months previously, Beauty and the Beast made twice as much for Disney. But looking at production costs, Beauty and the Beast cost about $160 million for Disney to produce. And while Moana's production costs were never actually disclosed, they were likely around $165 million. And if you look at the cost of the most recent CGI Jungle Book, you'll find that it only took about $15 million more to produce than the average animated flick. But not every one of these remakes is printing money. For instance, Alice Through the Looking Glass only made $70 million domestically to cover its $170 million budget. And the flagship Cinderella only made about $201 million in domestic. Sure, enough to cover production costs. But Inside Out, which came out the same year, grabbed $350 million. So basically what I'm trying to say is that these big spectacular remakes cost Disney about the same amount to produce as a new animated film. With every remake, more and more audience members are getting tired of this trend and asking for actual original content, animated or not. Pretty soon, people are going to stop seeing these remakes in theaters, and revenue is not going to keep up with the insane production costs. And yet, ignoring all warnings, Disney is confident that they will consistently be able to get people in seats when the time comes. Without any course correction, Disney is still announcing new remakes despite the audience groaning every single time. Guys, no one is excited for a live-action Lady and the Tramp. But despite all odds, Disney keeps getting it right. These movies are making money. People are still paying to see the spectacle again and again. So maybe the question isn't why won't Disney give up, but why do we let them get away with it? Well, the answer is extremely manipulative because it all depends on the power of nostalgia. Right, okay, obviously. But once again, let's look exactly at what they're doing. What did these movies all have in common? Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Mulan, The Little Mermaid, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and The Lion King. Okay, I'll give you a few moments to think. 3, 2, 1, time's up! In addition to being rumored or announced as live-action remakes, these movies are all from the same period of time known as the Disney Renaissance. Now, I know you probably know what that term means, but my mom watches these videos, so I'm gonna explain for her sake. So it's hard to imagine a time where Disney wasn't the most powerful juggernaut in major motion picture animation. But it happened. And in order to tell that story, here's a quick refresher on the time periods of the Disney catalog. So it all started back in the Golden Age, in the olden days of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The Golden Age was that lovely time at the end of the 1930s before World War II. I mean, we were in a depression, but at least movie tickets were cheap. Anyway, the Golden Age was the start of Disney's animation journey. They were producing instant classics like Snow White, Pinocchio, Dumbo, and it led all the way up until Bambi. This was what really rocketed Disney into power. I mean, sure, Mickey Mouse was great, but now there were full-length animated movies. And then there was war.
So it's been war! A war without end!
And things kinda slowed down for a while. And they picked back up in the 1950s for the Silver Age of Disney animation. The Silver Age really wasn't that different from the Golden Age, but since it was coming after a time of dormancy for the animated picture, it gets its own fancy name. This is where we find the bulk of old Disney movies, like Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Lady and the Tramp, Peter Pan, and The Jungle Book. Really great stuff, top notch. And this was the age where Disney once again ruled the world. They were pushing out hit after hit. They opened Disneyland in 1955, expanded the empire, all captained by the imaginative, powerful man behind the mouse, the guy who started it all, Walt Disney, who died in 1966. The last movie that Disney personally worked on himself was The Jungle Book, which is, uncoincidentally, the last Silver Age film, thus ushering in the Dark Age of Disney cinema. This was the time in the 70s and the 80s where everything came crashing down over Disney's head. Whereas in the Silver Age, where everything they touched became gold, here they were just producing flop after flop. Robin Hood, The Rescuers, Fox and the Hound, Oliver and Company, and The Great Mouse Detective. You know, all the Disney movies you look back on and say, eh. Or maybe all the ones you've heard about, but never really seen. The worst it ever got was the release of The Black Cauldron in 1985, also known as the film that almost killed Disney. It flopped so badly that for the most expensive animated movie of its time, it didn't even make back half of what it cost. It didn't even get close to #1 at the box office. In fact, it got beat by the Care Bears movie that had already been out for a month. So things weren't going great for Disney. They weren't making the money they were used to, the CEO title was getting passed around, and they were fading from the spotlight. In 1882, Coca-Cola actually tried to buy Disney. It didn't happen, but what? It got so bad, people were leaving the company and starting better companies. This is the story behind Don Bluth. You know, Land Before Time, American Tail, Secret of NIMH, that guy. In 1979, Bluth got so fed up with how the Disney company was being run that he left and took 12 animators with him to start their own independent film company. Bluth's movies were receiving such critical success that people were paying even less attention to Disney. So it was time for a wake-up call. And like in actual history, what follows the Dark Age but the Renaissance? Suddenly everything turned around and Disney quit producing lazy low-budget products, and in 1989, The Little Mermaid hit theaters. This changed everything. Disney began dominating the industry again, and they returned to making new original concepts and beautiful films that basically defined the company. Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King, along with The Little Mermaid, skyrocketed Disney back into popularity, while Pocahontas, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Mulan, Tarzan, and Hercules all continued to perform well at the box office. The Disney Princess franchise was born. They purchased Pixar. Disney was once again at the top of the world. After that comes a little slump called the Disney Modern period, where production slowed down a little bit in the early 2000s. This era is marked by the likes of The Emperor's New Groove, Home on the Range, Lilo and Stitch, Brother Bear, Meet the Robinsons, Princess and the Frog, Bullet, and Atlantis. Not huge hits, but popular enough. After the small dip, Disney once again struck gold in the revival era, also known as the postmodern era. This is basically when Disney started copying the 3D animation trend from DreamWorks and Pixar. So they produced Tangled, Wreck-It Ralph, Big Hero 6, Zootopia, Moana, and, I don't know, Frozen? In fact, a Disney property has won the Oscar for Best Animated Film for the last 6 years. And if you ignore 2011, the year Disney somehow didn't even get nominated for Tangled, they won the previous 4 as well. Which concludes our not so brief history of the Disney animated catalog and brings us up to the present moment. A time where we're not totally sure that there's going to be another original Disney film, and everything just seems to be getting remade. And a high proportion of the movies that have been announced are from the Disney Renaissance period. Let's put some puzzle pieces together. So way back before I started going through all the time periods, I mentioned the power of nostalgia. And this is the key to everything. Because in addition to being some of the most successful Disney movies of all time, the Renaissance films are also coming up on being 25 to 30 years old. For instance, The Little Mermaid came out in 1989, exactly 30 years ago. And why am I making such a big deal about the number 30? Well, there's this thing in Hollywood called the 30-year cycle. You know how the 80s came back in recent years? You know, how everyone fell in love with Stranger Things and it was one of the most successful horror movies of all time? Well, basically, it's because people like things from their childhoods, and when they grow up, they are willing to pay money to be reminded of it. So, about every 30 years, a new generation of adults starts feeling nostalgic for old movies and TV shows, and reboots happen. For a much more detailed explanation of the 30-year cycle, please check out this video by the far superior Lindsay Ellis. She's where I first heard the term, and honestly, she's one of my favorite channels, so just please click the card. Anyway, the Disney Renaissance is 25 to 30 years old. Here's an example. Let's say you were 10 when you first saw The Lion King in 1994. And of course you loved it. And you went on through your merry life, grew up, got a job, got married, had a few children. And now in 2019, you're 35. And guess what movie you're more likely to take your children to? Ugly Dolls or The Lion King. Right? Like, it's The Lion King. Whoever answered Ugly Dolls has not been paying attention. And also has no taste. But Lauren, you cry! Most of the Disney Renaissance films aren't 30 years old yet. Wouldn't these movies be coming too soon? Well, first of all, 30 isn't a precise number. We're still in the sweet spot for childhood nostalgia, especially in the next few years. And secondly, we're talking about Disney movies here. Sure, adults can love them, but their target demographic has always been children. So therefore, many people saw these movies at a much younger, more impressionable age, and now they're a little bit older and more likely to have children. Bam! 30-year cycle. Besides, if they were actually aiming for a precise 30 years, we'd be rehashing the Dark Age right now. And nobody wants that. Also, Disney isn't the only ones doing this. The 90s have kind of crept up on us while we were all gorging ourselves with Eggos. For instance, Star Wars has been operating on a 20-year cycle. 1970s, 1990s, and now we're 8 movies deep and excited for more. Jurassic Park is back. The first movie came out in 1993. What? Oh, that movie didn't do so well? Well, that was also the late 90s. Basically, Hollywood has completely run out of ideas for new movies and is just doing all the old ones again. I can't wait for the gritty reboot of Matilda or Adventures in Babysitting. Wait, what? Freaky Friday. Disney, what are you doing? So that's how these live action remakes really work. You market a childhood favorite to the parents who are looking to introduce their children to the magic of Disney. They pay to watch a semi-famous cast kinda do the same things from the original, but with just enough changes that they can justify selling you the same movie.
Bittersweet and strange, finding you can change, learning you were wrong.
It looks great, feels fine, and everybody goes home happy. It's a ridiculously safe bet for Disney. They're gonna make money no matter what. Look at The Jungle Book. That movie was a mess. A mess that made $966 million worldwide. But here's the problem. Disney isn't doing anything new. Nothing is new. Even Pixar is making lackluster sequels. And remember what happened last time Disney wasn't coming up with innovative ideas, when they just played everything safe? Are we on the precipice of another Disney dark age? I mean, it's been about 10 years since the revival. 3D animation isn't a guarantee hit anymore. Production has slowed down. We don't know what their next project is. It's getting to be about time for the next era of Disney animation. But all we're getting is live action filler content. It's making me kind of nervous. And here's the thing, I'm sure Disney knows all of this. I think they know it, and they don't know how to stop. It's like they're all collectively having a case of writer's block and they're scared of another dark age. So what saved them the last time? The Renaissance. So hey, let's do that again. Except they're missing the point entirely. What people loved about the Renaissance was not the films themselves. There's nothing special about the stories of Mulan and Aladdin. Rather, it was that they were new and funny and had great animation. It had heart. What saved Disney wasn't The Lion King, it was hard work and innovation. Things that the live action remakes aren't designed to be. Pretty much by definition, a remake cannot be totally new. And what happens every time Disney is in a slump? Someone else rises to the challenge. In the 80s, it was Don Bluth and his creatively dark take on children's entertainment. In the 2000s, it was DreamWorks and its satirical and mature humor. But right now, I don't think anyone's up for the fight. I mean, everyone is so busy trying to copy Disney that no one's trying to overthrow them. Disney is a sitting duck, but there are no hunters. And it's making them lazy. Why won't Disney give up their live action remakes? Because no one's making them. They don't have to innovate to survive, so they aren't even trying. But hey, they're making money. So who cares if they're nothing but spectacle? In case you can't tell, I'm not a huge fan of the remake trend. But hey, if you liked this video, why don't you subscribe and tell your friends, because we are currently dying a slow, painful YouTube death. Wow, I am not meaning to sound this depressing. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Twitter, click the end card, yada yada yada. This was a really long video, and I want to go to bed. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.
Our voice will not be denied.
You've had your say. Can we please get some to eat?